Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. Today, the Indian Navy commissioned the third stealth-guided missile destroyer, INS Imphal. And this commissioning happened with the presence of the Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. In fact, this adds another feather to the cap of the Indian Navy that has enhanced its military might in the Indian Ocean region. We'll start this conversation, but before that, let's quickly take a listen to what the Union Minister of Defence Rajnath Singh had to say at the ceremony at the Naval Dockyard in Mumbai.
आईएनएस इम्फाल का भारतीय नौसेना में शामिल होना रक्षा क्षेत्र में भारत की आत्मनिर्भरता का यह जीता जागता प्रमाण है। यह राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा के प्रति एमडीएल एवं नेवी की कमिटमेंट और इसके निर्माण में शामिल सभी स्टेक होल्डर्स की कठिन मेहनत, लगन और समर्पण को भी दर्शाता है। आईएनएस इम्फाल की कमीशनिंग भारत की नौसैनिक शक्ति को और मजबूती प्रदान करेगा, ऐसा मेरा पक्का विश्वास है।
All right, let's start this conversation with Commodore Anil Jai Singh. Commodore, this is a big achievement for our country, a third indigenous stealth missile destroyer that has been commissioned into the Indian Navy. How does this impact India's presence in the Indian Ocean region?
Good evening. Thank you for having me on your show. It is indeed a very significant day. INS Imphal, as you mentioned, the third guided missile destroyer of the Project 15 Bravo class, will add a lot of muscle to the Indian Navy's presence in the Indian Ocean. As you're aware, in the Indian Ocean and the larger Indo-Pacific, India is one of the largest naval powers already. However, the challenges that we are likely to face in the next few years are going to seriously underline our ability to shape the maritime environment in the larger Indian Ocean. You know, with the rapid expansion of the PLA Navy, the likely past struggle that's going to take place between the US and China, I'm sure what will take place in the Indian Ocean, it is very important that the Indian Navy retains its favorable maritime situation at all times in these waters. We have tremendous amount of maritime interests. Most of our trade, 90% of our trade and 80% of our oil and gas travels over the sea. Therefore, keeping our sea lines of communication open, safety and security of our trade and energy is critical for not only India's economy, but for India as a country on the whole. And therefore, any capability like INS Imphal, the addition of such a capability adds great capacity to our naval force levels. It's a very powerful destroyer. It's probably one of the most modern destroyers in the world. It's a large ship, displaces, I think, over 8,000 tons, and therefore will add a lot of muscle. You know, last year we also commissioned INS Vikrant, the second indigenous aircraft carrier, with the intention that we should be able to operate two carrier battle groups in the Indian Ocean at all times, one on our western seaboard and the other on our eastern seaboard. And that's why we needed 2 or 3 carriers. Now, carriers are always escorted by a powerful carrier battle group, and destroyers form the cutting edge of that battle group, who can take the fight to the enemy. And you know, they add a lot of flexibility and maneuverability to the Indian Navy's capability. Destroyers like Imphal, when they operate in conjunction with the carrier battle group, as part of the carrier battle group, will add a lot of offensive capability to the Navy. And also, a ship of this caliber is able to go into harm's way on its own and deliver the goods.
Okay.
It has got all kinds of weapons and sensor capability, which we can talk about later.
Okay, all right. That's a descriptive view that you have provided when it comes to how the operations of the Indian Navy perform when it comes to a battle-like situation in the maritime region. Captain Shyam Kumar, taking forward this conversation and of the recent unfortunate incident that has taken place where a merchant ship has been attacked by the Houthi attackers. Now, there are 3 warships that have been placed in the Indian Ocean region for surveillance purposes and protection purposes. How does a destroyer like INS Imphal help in containing such attacks on our naval ships?
Destroyers are formidable, potent weapon platforms for any nation and for the Navy. And as we know, the destroyer means that it is a part of a larger force, or it can operate in isolation. Now, looking at India's vast exclusive economic zone of 2.38 square million kilometers, and the land is 3.18 square million square kilometers. So we have enough land to carry, enough sea to carry surveillance. Therefore, a potent naval weaponry platforms are required. In the latest attack at the Arabian Sea of Porbandar, when we see this attack happening, such asymmetric threats, as such in normal policing at sea, naval roles are very, very evident that every time we need to sanitize our waters through aircraft, through ships and submarines in our areas of interest, and keep a proper maritime domain awareness and update our war rooms on a daily basis, so that our mercantile and sea lanes of communication, freedom of navigation is ensured. Having said that, now we have deployed Kolkata, Mormugao and Kochi of the Gulf of Aden for anti-piracy, as well as keeping the sea lanes of communication open. We need to further look at the investments into the Indian Navy, because having 2 carriers and 11 destroyers, the 4th one, which is going to come up as Surat, the latest destroyer next year. These 4 ships plus another 7 total destroyers, 14. Destroyers also means capable of carrying out multi-threat, operating in multi-threat environment. That means surface to surface, anti-submarine, as well as aircraft. So anti-air defense, anti-submarine defense, and anti-surface defense. This destroyer is capable of doing that.
Okay.
Even our frigates are capable of doing that. So therefore, our requirement to have more ships, 65 of them in the shipyards coming up, indigenization, the political will and the faith of the people is required to put the weaponry platform more at sea, more investment into sea, because tomorrow's day is lying into the sea.
Okay.
Our safety and security.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as Commodore Anil Jai Singh said that, 90% of our trade actually takes place via sea. And Commodore Singh, does it come as a surprise or shock to you that thus far we were not militarily equipped to enhance our naval forces, keeping in mind how hugely dependent we are in terms of the commercial trade that takes place via the sea, keeping in mind our land borders at this time are witnessing heavily belligerent nations on the western front and the northern front?
I wouldn't agree with you there when you say that we were not prepared or, it's come as a shock. I think the Indian Navy has always been structured right from independence. When India became independent in 1947, the Royal Indian Navy was divided 2/3, 1/3 between us and Pakistan. And we were left with just 33 ships, out of which there were 3 sloops, and the rest were some small ships. So we were basically a brown water Navy. But the planners of the Navy at that time had the vision to realize that ultimately, as the largest country in the Indian Ocean and a maritime country, basically because of having the sea on 3 sides, we will need a blue water Navy. So the Indian Navy, right from day one, has been structured as a blue water Navy. We got our first aircraft carrier in 1961. We got our submarines in 1967. And ever since then, despite the fact that we've had resource constraints, the land borders have occupied most of our attention and continue to do so, which is not surprising at all. The Navy has been very steadily building its capability. It has constantly adjusted its requirements depending on the kind of situation that was prevailing. And over the last many years, it has been the preeminent naval power in the Indian Ocean. Of course, in any navy in the world, there are capability deficits, there are capability gaps which come and go at various times. But that is not to suggest that the Indian Navy has not been in a position at any point of time to perform what it was supposed to perform or the role it is meant to perform. Mm-hmm. Any addition to that would always be welcome. The situation is changing rapidly, as was brought out. The non-traditional threat, the traditional threat, the transnational threat, we are seeing all of it almost on a daily basis in this region. And therefore, we need a powerful Navy. And the more powerful the Navy is, the better we will be able to protect our national interests in the maritime domain.
Absolutely. Major General Sivaj, when we talk about building indigenous naval warfare to counter these threats, whether it is about the Indian Ocean region and the growing aggressiveness of the Chinese in the Indian Ocean region, or for that matter, the threat that we recently witnessed in the Arabian Sea or in the Red Sea. Are we at this time better equipped to handle these threats than we were maybe 5 years ago or a decade ago?
Very correct. Because 2-3 things stands out. As far as indigenization is concerned, I think Navy is head of Army and Air Force. And they started indigenization almost 20 to 30 years earlier than other two forces. And that's why we could make our own aircraft carrier. The INS Vikrant is a testimony to that, which has almost 70 to 75% indigenous thing. Now this destroyer INS Imphal, which is there, is again 75% is been built in India itself. So the point today is that the Navy is fast growing, and from brown Navy you need a blue water Navy. You are a part of a quad which has got a basic principle: free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific, with the 3 guiding principle: freedom of navigation, rule-based international order, maintaining territorial integrity and sovereignty of whole nation, including minor island nation. Now, having said so, you must have that capability also to perform these tasks. So it's a challenging task, and therefore, my point is, in time to come, you want to have a strong Navy. Possibly, we have to focus more on a Navy than even any other two service, because there is scope is more. As far as Indian Ocean is concerned, 70 to 80% of trade goes from in the Indian Ocean through the sea. Not only that, it is also the other countries' trade is going through the sea lane. As on today, we have an upper hand on the China that we can block basically Chinese Malacca Strait, and Chinese do not have oil more than 40 to 50 days. And this challenge is there to China, and China knows it. But that is not going to stay for long. China is fast growing its Navy. It has already become the largest Navy in the world with number of ships. The quality may be lacking compared to US, but they are fast growing. And therefore, the requirement of India is that you need 3 aircraft carrier any point of time, so that 2 are always operational, one in Bay of Bengal, one in Arabian Sea.
Okay.
You also require nuclear power submarine. The combination has to be both, because submarines are requirement of the day, and if you want area to be sanitized, keep your area of interest under control, you need nuclear power submarine. So therefore, what I will say, that Navy has to be taken care of, and Navy cannot be built in a day. It takes long time. So strategically, we have to build up for another 20, 30, 40 years. And those milestones start now ticking off. And I'm sure we are going on the right path. And the biggest advantage India has done it, that is start building its own, whether it is submarine, whether it is destroyer or any other ship which is there, or aircraft carrier group. We have started building ourselves, and this has given us a lot of confidence.
Okay.
Mega.
Commodore Jai Singh, then would it be wise, and are we then moving forward in the direction of competing with the naval superpowers of America and China? Or should we be content in the way we are growing, at the speed that we are growing, and then expecting support from the fleet of American naval ships, whether it is the submarines or the aircraft carriers, in case there is belligerence, in case there is an all-out war that breaks out in the Indian Ocean region? Also, the mention of Quad, which is an integration of the military might, maritime military might particularly, between all the 4 nations.
See, firstly, when you compare navies, it is not a zero-sum game. It is not ship versus ship, submarine versus submarine. It's about where you're operating. So the PLA Navy, for all its strength, its present 350 ships, despite being the largest navy in the world, as the general brought out, still does not have the capacity or the capability to take on the Indian Navy in the Indian Ocean. And it is not a coincidence that in the last 3 years, when we've had this very tense border standoff, the PLA Navy has at no stage got into a skirmish with the Indian Navy at all. It stayed well clear of the Indian Navy in the Indian Ocean. At any given time, there are 6 to 7 PLA Navy ships operating in the Indian Ocean, but they have stayed well clear of the Indian Navy. This situation will change because the PLA Navy is growing at an astonishing pace. By 2030, they will have 450 ships in the Navy, and 150 of them will be blue water capable, which means that they will have 150 ships in the Navy which will be capable of coming and operating in the Indian Ocean. They will have a third aircraft carrier, which will probably be based in the Indian Ocean permanently. They have a base in Djibouti where they're modifying that to berth aircraft carriers. So we're going to see a very different PLA Navy by 2030. Now, China's biggest constraint at the moment is that its own maritime geography is unfavorable. It cannot dominate it cannot have global maritime dominance unless it has a sea space to operate. That sea space will be provided by the Indian Ocean. So we are definitely going to see a much larger naval presence, Chinese naval presence in the Indian Ocean. The Indian Navy today and the Indian Navy envisaged, let's say 10 years from now, is more than capable of ensuring that we still have a favorable maritime situation in the Indian Ocean in our favor. But we have to, as the general brought out, navies don't get built in a day. It has to be a very structured, very well planned out, well thought out shipbuilding and submarine building plan, adequately funded with committed funding, very clear on what technologies we want. Ship design has to progress, shipbuilding capacity in the country has to be increased. All these factors have to go hand in hand. But there is no reason to believe that 10 years from now we will in any way be not good enough to hold our own in the Indian Ocean. We may not be the most superior navy. We don't have to be in terms of ships and capability. We should be able to hold our own in our area of interest. That's the bottom line.
Okay, fair enough. Captain Shyam Kumar, again, I'm going to raise the question of the integrated forces in the maritime territory when it comes to the Quad nations. And the reason that has been built is because of the Indian Ocean region where China has tried to showcase its might. Can an integration and cooperation amongst nations who are aligned with each other over a set of goals and principles be united together instead of proving themselves better than the other in terms of the weapons race that we at one point of time witnessed between America and Russia, in terms of the nuclear race that at one point of time used to be seen across the globe, and India and Pakistan being integral parts of it, and now for that matter the global superpower tag that China continues to fight against America with its naval might as well.
India has its own stand today in the world's map. Indian Navy stands at 7th largest navy of the world, with more than 65 to 75,000 people and more than that in reserve. We also have to look after 7,500 kilometers of the borders and 2.38 square million kilometers of EEZ. And our concerns are from African coast, Madagascar, Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean to the African coast and Malacca Strait. So Indian Oceanic region, we add Sagar concept of security of and growth of all in the region. We are looking at expansion of our Indian Navy steadily, and we are doing so. As far as the lead time is concerned, a maritime perspective capability plan, MCP, Maritime Capability Perspective Plan has been laid down. We have revised our plans. Today, 67 ships are under construction in different shipyards. Out of that, 65 was in India. And we are indigenizing them. Lead time are being very, very cut down. This ship is an example. Imphal is an example. 2017, keel led, 19 launched, and now in 2 years it has been commissioned. And only 6 months of harbor trials with indigenous capability and firing a SSM before commissioning. Supersonic BrahMos. This says the DRDO's capability and MSME involvement. The entire steel is Indian. So the lead time is also coming less. Now I would like to say here is India needs much more strength in the Navy. Quad, your question is, China called the Quad as oceanic foam. It will die down. But Australia, Japan, India and USA, multilateral third. Milan, 54 countries are going to participate in Visakhapatnam in the naval operations exercises in next year. The Naval Symposium, which is happening in India every year, is a testimony to having a multilateral environment in which we are going to thwart any attempt of Chinese into the Indian Ocean. And whether it is Djibouti, we have the Socotra Island. Under UAC collaborations, we are looking at India-Europe Middle Corridor. UAE is supporting us. And Socotra is located at mouth of Gulf of Aden, which is a very, very important place.
Okay.
When we get into that, we are happy.
Okay.
So we also are having our diamond necklace against the pulse of string diplomacy of China, and we are doing that.
Okay, all right. General Sivaj, then when we take a look at the Chinese salami slicing activities, debt traps that it creates, whether it is in Sri Lanka or it is in Djibouti, or you take a look at a number of naval bases China has ended up building in South America, or even along the CPEC border, that has the CPEC project that has been created, and taking a look at the Gwadar port. Should India also venture forth? And India has been venturing, but are we up to speed in building up naval bases?
Absolutely. See, Megha, first of all, what China is doing, no doubt about it. The pearl of strings, we must understand it, how it has laid down, that is start from Myanmar in Kuakapu and Coco Island, and then Chittagong in Bangladesh, Haman-Tota in Sri Lanka, to Maldives Island it is developing, then Djibouti in East Africa, and then Gwadar in Pakistan. So it is building up all these islands and for military use, trying to put pressure on India and encircling India. In addition to that, it has made two arms, one in the east, one in the west of India. The one which is in Pakistan, that is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, goes from Gwadar and goes to Xinjiang province. It can take oil also, it can take all the thing. At the same time, on the eastern side, it has got another eastern flank which starts from Kuakapu and then goes up till Yunnan province. That is basically the China-Myanmar economic corridor. So that also we must understand that what China is doing in Indian Ocean and how China is building its own capability and capacity. But notwithstanding that, India is understanding that, and therefore, as far as India is concerned, India is going in a very systematic fashion to look after another 20, 30, 50 years, and not only Navy, Air Force and Army. So, and both this Navy and Air Force, they are capital heavy, and you cannot start building in 5-10 years.
Right.
The plan has to be long, and that's what we are now trying to do. So how do we handle it? That do we have so much money with us? The answer to this is Indianization. Make in India, Atmanirbhar. As and when we have started building our own, we are finding it now we are growing faster because we have got money, our own MCME and our own, public sector and private sector is coming up, and we start building up. You see Bermud, you see Tejas Mark 1, you find INS Vikrant, we are building up submarine.
Right.
So if we build up within our own country, the roadmap which we have made and milestone which we have made it for ourselves, I am sure we will able to. But
Okay.
the point which you are saying, Megha, that we will cooperate with the navies of the other world. But you must understand, as far as today you are a part of Quad, and America is also there with you. Remember what happened in 1971? They have brought the 7th Fleet to pressurize India. So you can't have a permanent enemy and permanent friend in this world. It is only your permanent interest. So
Okay.
you have to grow your navy.
Absolutely.
You can't be dependent on all. If you are strong, people are there to cooperate and coordinate with you.
Okay.
Megha.
Okay, all right. I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast. And an important aspect in terms of the naval fleet that we have been able to expand, the INS Imphal, it's a feather in the cap. And here's hoping that there are going to be more of these indigenous projects and manufacturing of our naval fleet that is going to make India more capable in fighting out threats in the Indian Ocean region and beyond. Thanks for watching.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.